Hello, I'm Luna, an astrologer and tarot reader of over 8 years. I have had the joy of guiding over 1,000 clients on their own personal astrological journeys, and today we're going to be talking about Blake Lively and Taylor Swift. So apparently Taylor has gotten completely wrapped up in the Justin Baldoni case. He mentioned her in his own lawsuit, talking about how apparently Blake and her posse, Taylor, and her husband Ryan ganged up on him in her penthouse. So that was crazy. So I want to take a look now that Taylor's been mentioned, what's going on between them, what's their dynamic, maybe how does Taylor feel about the situation that Blake has kind of dragged her into. And if you would like your own personalized reading, you can head on over to my store. The link is in the description below. So let's take a look at what's going on here. So the first thing I'm noticing is we have, first off, in the inner circle, we have Blake's chart. Outer circle, we have Taylor's chart in orange. Her birth time is very iffy. Right now, this chart has her as a Capricorn rising. So we're really not going to pay attention to the house placements. Let's just take a look at the aspects between them. But I'm noticing that Taylor's sun is directly on top of Blake's Uranus. So what this means is that, and it's also conjunct Blake's Saturn. So what this means is that Blake really sees Taylor as some sort of like visionary, someone who she wants to learn from, someone she wants to be like, because the sun is Taylor's essence. It's who she is. It's her ego. It's how she shines in the world. And this is Saturn and Uranus represent Blake's structure, what she thinks is maturity, what she thinks is like commendable or traditional or worthy of being seen as legitimate. And Uranus is all about eccentricity and innovation. And so she really sees Taylor as like a mad genius, and she really wants to be part of that mad genius. And something that's interesting too is that this is kind of a symbiotic relationship, on Taylor's end with her sun conjunct Blake's Uranus. She feels like Blake brings a level of uniqueness or unpredictability to her that inspires her, right? So I do know that Taylor made a few songs referencing Blake or her children, which isn't surprising with this placement. This means that they can kind of feed off of each other's creative genius. Okay, now Taylor's sun does fall into Blake's fifth house, which indicates that, I do know that Taylor's pretty close with Blake's children, so this is not at all surprising. It's a very fun placement to have. So she definitely has a strong connection to her children, but I also feel like there is a little bit of weirdness or unpredictability around their dynamic. I think it could indicate that Taylor can feel like this is her friend, but it's also, she feels almost like a mentor to Blake. So there is kind of a blurring of lines here that's going on. We also have Taylor's south node on Blake's ascendant. This is really interesting because it means that they look good together. They just seem to fit together. I mean, they're two very beautiful blonde women, and they're very successful in their own fields. But also, the South Node is an energy that drains things. The South Node is, it's an energy of the past. It's an energy of stagnation. And so this is the energy that Taylor will naturally embody in her life, the South Node in Leo. She, without even trying, naturally creates waves, right? So her South Node in Leo means that she has always been able to draw attention. She has always been able to be an entertainer. She has always been able to draw all eyes to her. And this is something that Blake is also innately good at. However, for Blake, it's a little bit more of a mask that she puts on, because the ascendant is also how we present ourselves to the world. And so Blake wants to be seen as, this strong Leo person. So someone who's very successful and beautiful and attractive, right? This celebrity. But Taylor is celebrity, right? So the South Node here means that Taylor's energy in some ways drains some of Blake's celebrity. The reason being because, well, Taylor is just a bigger star. And so this might not necessarily be something that Blake would admit. It might not even be something that she's consciously aware of, but we do have the vertex here, which indicates that there is a little bit of, I like to be associated with someone who is this famous kind of vibe. Vertex is like a fated connection, but it's also a connection that transforms your life. And the South Node here indicates they probably have a lot of history together, but it's also a little bit of a draining energy where Blake might feel like being around Taylor is a privilege, but it also makes her feel a little bit small in comparison, which means that Taylor's North Node is on her descendant, because the South and North Node are opposite to one another. And so Taylor's North Node being on Blake's seventh house indicates that this is, a very, very important friendship in the life of Blake, especially. The North Node is an aspirational energy, so this indicates that, Blake wants to be like Taylor, but also feels, again, privileged. Aquarius is like your posse. It's like who you surround yourself with. And so having Taylor's North Node on her descendant, on Blake's descendant, means that Blake really sees her as someone who is incredibly powerful in her circle of friends and influential in her circle of friends, right? We also have this Venus square to Jupiter and Venus square to Pluto. This is an interesting dynamic between them. It's kind of like how do I explain this? It kind of reminds me of like, like in movies with like, there's like the mean girl, like say like Regina George, and then there's like her two little pets. It's interesting that Blake mentioned Taylor and Ryan as her pets, but I think it's actually the other way around with this placement. Venus is a planet of like rewards, beauty, luxury, right? And social status. So Venus could be social currency. And that's definitely something that Taylor has. In Aquarius, she has a lot of influence. But it squares Blake's Jupiter. So Jupiter is all about generosity. It's all about receiving abundance. However, when it squares Venus, it means that, again, this is a mutually beneficial relationship. Blake feels like she receives from being associated with someone as beautiful and successful and known and popular as Taylor. But Taylor also really enjoys being a mentor, right? Jupiter. She enjoys being the center of attention and being put in a mentor position to Blake. So Blake does kind of look up to Taylor, and I think Taylor understands, especially with the square to Pluto here, that she has a strong pull over Blake. The Venus square to Pluto is interesting because it means that there is a really strong glue between them. They really do have a very long-lasting friendship, and I do think it's very long-standing. However, it's also a friendship built on control and power hierarchies, because Pluto brings power hierarchies, and Blake is someone who understands power and like where she falls on the spectrum of power very well, mainly because her Pluto sextiles her entire Virgo stellium. Virgo is a sign that is completely comfortable being a part of the team. Benefiting from the bigger people, right? So Virgo is of service, and not all Virgos are necessarily like service in like servant ways, but it indicates that in few words, Blake doesn't feel bad being submissive. She actually enjoys being submissive, and especially if it gets her the privilege of being around powerful people. Why do you think she's around Mars and Scorpio people so often? And so what this means is that Blake knows her place when it comes to Taylor, and she is comfortable being the little version, right? The smaller one in comparison to Taylor. And Taylor likes this, Venus in Aquarius. But it also means that Taylor may at times, because this is a square, it's not a healthy aspect. It means that Blake may oftentimes let Taylor do things or guide her to make decisions that maybe she doesn't want to make. I'm not sure exactly how that could play out, but there could just be a sense of like, again, like think like Mean Girls, like Regina George calls the shots. It doesn't mean that Taylor's mean or anything, but it just means that there is a firm hierarchy in this relationship for sure. Another thing that's going on that really reiterates that to me is this Mars and Scorpio squaring all of Blake's Virgo. I think that Blake is more submissive. Yeah, she's like more of a person who would rather like play nice and get what she wants than to try to like push for what she wants in like a really straightforward way. And it's interesting because Blake did mention, like in a lot of her text messages with Justin, she mentioned that she needed to be a little stronger, that she needed to be a little more like Ryan and Taylor, and that they were really egging her on, this Mars and Scorpio, take what's yours, right? But this square here means that at times Taylor's need for Blake to stand up or be more forceful can come off to Blake as though she's inferior, right? With Virgo energy being a little more delicate and a little bit more neurotic or analytical. And Mars and Scorpio is a heavy hand. It's a very heavy hand. It's very calculated. And Blake might not be a very calculated girl. And so she may at times with this square to Mars, when you have squares to Mars, it means that you're hurting people's feelings. You are bulldozing them or kind of making them feel like you're kind of being mean. And so a Mars square here means that to her son especially, Blake feels like she can't lead around Taylor. But she's okay with Taylor leading, but sometimes Taylor kind of like telling her, oh, you should, like for example, in the context of the movie, I don't really know how involved Taylor was, but I'm sure that Taylor would be like, no, you need to take charge. You need to get what you want. And Blake's like, yeah, no, like I need to stop being so like submissive. I need to stop being so like accommodating, and I need to like start being more aggressive, right? And it probably came from a place of like a little bit of insecurity, like, yeah, like I need to stand up for myself and be more like Taylor. And so like it can come from a little bit of a like feeling put down kind of place. And this also aligns with the Saturn Sun is interesting, because I do think that there is aspects of Blake's life that Taylor wishes she had, but I think that she doesn't like those roles to be reversed. She wants to be the mentor in the relationship, right? Taylor wants to remain the mentor in the relationship. And if there are any things in Blake's life that Taylor wants, I don't think she would ever let Taylor know that, especially because she has a Mars-Pluto conjunction. So Taylor's, she keeps her cards close to her chest, and so she wouldn't really allow herself to be like in a position of, how do I explain this, in like a position below Blake, if that makes sense. We also have all of Taylor's moon, Jupiter, Chiron, part of fortune opposing Blake's Neptune. So yeah, Blake idealizes Taylor. She puts her on a pedestal, and she also sees her as like very nurturing, very giving, very, oh, like Taylor's so nice. Taylor like does so much for me. Taylor gives me so much, right? And even like her trines to Pluto. But again, it's Pluto. Whenever you're having like Pluto aspects, and even like Taylor's sun on her Saturn, this is like establishing like, I'm the authority. I have power and I'm giving you some of it. I am so successful and like special, and I'm going to shine some of it on you. So Blake really does feel incredibly privileged to be a part of Taylor's life. Because frankly, here's the thing, Blake, she has a ton of this like second house stuff, and she also has this Chiron in the 11th house. She's very concerned with optics. She's very concerned with like, like social currency and prestige and all that stuff. She's very aware of all those things. And Blake is in a really good position when it comes to Taylor. Like, look at all these blue lines. All these blue lines. Like, Blake only benefits from being around Taylor. Even if Taylor makes her feel a little small at times with this Mars square, or, the South Node on the Ascendant, even if she loses a little bit of star power when she's next to Taylor, even if, the Sun, Saturn, she kind of sees Taylor as like so much better at her than in a lot of things, she still feels like it's worth it, right? Because look at all these trines to her Saturn right here, and Neptune and Mercury and Uranus. So this means that Taylor's very business savvy. Taylor's very good at money and career and status. She knows how to play this game. Blake doesn't. Blake knows how to be pretty. She knows how to be likable. She knows how to like play the social game. She's more of a socialite. She's also really good at like beauty and aesthetics. Virgos are really good at that stuff. But she's definitely not a businesswoman. She's not like a mastermind. But Taylor is. And so guess what happens? Blake comes to Taylor with her ideas, and then Taylor says, okay, this is what we're going to do, right? And that makes Taylor feel like an authority. She loves to feel like the smart one, right? Mercury and Capricorn, she feels like, these trines to Mercury's, they really enjoy having conversations because Blake feels like she can learn from Taylor, and Taylor likes to be the authority or the boss kind of vibe, and like they both kind of admire each other in that way. And I also think Taylor admires maybe how beautiful and easygoing and like easily liked Blake is, right? She might admire her beauty because she has her Venus here. So they both like enjoy the roles that they play in this relationship. What else do we have going on? We have this Moon Chiron conjunction. Yeah. So Blake has this huge wound around belonging. She wants to belong. Chiron in Gemini is like, she really fears gossip. She fears people excluding her. She fears like people turning on her, which is exactly what's happening because her Chiron's being activated over the past year. And Chiron in the 11th house is like, I'm not as popular as the people I'm around. I'm not as successful. I'm not as smart, right? Gemini's like, I'm not as smart, right? I think she had like a blog or something, like Blake had a blog, and she's like, I want to be a writer. Chiron in Gemini is like, I don't think I'm smart enough. I don't think I'm a good writer. And guess who's an amazing writer? Taylor, right? So Chiron moon is like, first off, Taylor soothes this fear. So like Blake comes to her like, oh, I feel like I'm not as talented, or I feel like I'm not as good at writing. And it's interesting that this whole debacle around this movie was about Taylor trying to convince Justin that he should let Blake write, that one scene, which is interesting because again, here comes Taylor to save the day. The moon's very nurturing, and her Jupiter here, like, I'm going to come here and I'm going to give you my generosity. I'm going to be a good sport. I'm going to soothe your fears, and I'm going to use my power to help you out again. But this time it didn't work. And it didn't work because Justin is also a Scorpio, which I actually have his chart here, so we're going to take a look at that too. But yeah, so this is like very symbiotic again. Like Taylor loves to be a nurturer. She loves to like give, but she loves to give from a position of power. Like she likes to feel admired and appreciated, and Blake definitely does that. And also just being around Taylor, right? Being around someone successful and having someone successful like really care for her soothes her fear with Chiron in the 11th house that she's going to be excluded, or that she's not like one of the cool kids. Chiron in the 11th house is just, it's very high school, right? In this case being Hollywood being high school. So that's pretty much that. Like, I do think that I've taken a peek at Selena's chart. I think that Taylor and Selena's friendship is a little bit more built on even ground because they have a sun-moon conjunction. I think between Blake and Taylor, it's very mentor-mentee. It's very benefactor. It's also like optics a little bit with the South Node on the Ascendant. Like, we look good together, the North Node in the 7th house. I do think that they both really, really, really value this friendship with the North Node here, and her Venus. Taylor's Venus is not too far from Blake's descendant either. So I think they get along really well. but also because they both understand their roles in the relationship very well. Now I want to take a look at Taylor's dynamic with Justin, just to kind of see what was going on there. Like, was she trying to intimidate him? You know, what was going on here? So this is his chart. He has a Virgo rising. And again, her chart is like kind of iffy. So his Venus, Jupiter, Neptune conjunction is right around her Uranus. This is really interesting. I do think that Taylor thinks he's very inventive. She admires his creativity. She admires his vision. So there's a little bit of a mutual like respect going on here. Like she respects what he does kind of vibe. I mean, his Mercury is on her Mercury. So like they really see eye to eye actually. And I think he really admires her too. There's mutual respect going on here from creator to creator. Her Venus is on his Sun. She probably thinks he's very good looking, a very attractive man. This also means that I don't really see any beef between them. I think that if there was a confrontation, I think it was probably more like Taylor being like, listen, I'm a creator. This is my expertise. And from creator to creator, I think that this scene is really good. Like, I think it was probably not as menacing as it might have been implied. I think it's probably just the principle, the principle of like Blake throwing her power around, right? Like throwing around her powerful friends. Even if they weren't necessarily intimidating him directly, maybe she was just trying, like Taylor was just trying to share her perspective and maybe thought, maybe he respects me, I respect him, maybe he will listen to my perspective. But I think that that's just weird. That's just not professional. And like that was part of like their dynamic, Justin and Blake's dynamic. Like his Mars is on her Pluto, where like Blake's just like inadvertently throwing her power around and it's creating confrontation without her even realizing it. So I don't know if Taylor was super wrapped up in that. Her moon in Cancer, Jupiter Chiron opposes his Mercury. I think that he's a little bit more professional and maybe expected him to be a little bit more mushy with her. I think that's as far as like maybe any negative vibes go, but this is part of a yod right here. And there's like a ton of blue lines. So like they actually really get along. Like emotionally they see eye to eye. His Mars is trine her moon. I don't think he has beef with Taylor. I think he has beef with Blake. And I think that if Taylor got wrapped up in it, right, this is her moon Chiron. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to solve your problems. I'm going to use my power to help you out, Blake. And then boom, she's like, I'm going to do her a solid. I'm going to talk creator to creator. Little does she know, like, all the other stuff that's going on and how this was like a whole power move. I wonder how she feels about what Blake said about her being her dragon. And that's interesting. But that's that. Let's take a look at the tarot to see maybe how Taylor's currently feeling about that. So I want to ask that question, like, how does Taylor feel about, Blake's comment about her being her dragon? Two of Cups. I don't think she's taking it personally. The King of Wands. Interesting. Let's pull one more. Whoops. We have the Emperor. Okay. I think that, Page of Cups. I don't think that they're beefing over this, but, ooh, this is interesting. The Emperor is like her empire. It's like her money, her career, her authority. I think that Taylor didn't take that comment personally. I think that Taylor understands, like, clearly I'm the powerful one in this friendship. I don't need to say that. I think Taylor, at the very least, feigns humility. Like, I don't think she would ever be like, why would you ever say that? Like, I'm clearly the more powerful one here. But I think it's an understanding between them. Like, I think Blake is like, dude, obviously, like, you're amazing. Like, I'm beneath you. But I also think, Two of Cups, King of Wands, I think she might have had a stern talking to with Blake about their friendship and her as like a boss or her as like a businesswoman. So I'm going to pull another spread for that question. Like, what is Taylor doing about this, if anything? Like, how is she handling being brought into Blake's Three of Swords? Okay, how is she handling being brought into Blake's lawsuit? Page of Wands and Judgment. Interesting. Okay, I see exactly what this is. I think that they came to an understanding where, like, Blake was like, not Blake, Taylor was probably like, listen, I support you behind the scenes, Page of Wands. I ride or die for you. But publicly, Judgment, I can't do that, right? Eight of Cups means I have to walk away from this. I have to at least publicly pretend that I have walked away from you. Three of Swords is like, this is heartbreaking. Know that I ride or die for you, but we need to manage public perception right now. So this is interesting. Let's see. How does Taylor currently feel about her friendship with Blake? Where's the friendship at? Yeah, I think they're on good terms. King of Wands. Interesting. Okay, I feel like if Taylor is upset at Blake, she has not said anything to her. I think that she probably just said like, hey, I support you, I love you, but I need to like at least publicly walk away from you. I can't get involved in that, but I really support you in your entire fight, right? Like I think she's being a good girlfriend. But I also feel like if Taylor is upset, she's keeping it to herself. The Hanged Man, I do think that the situation did cause Taylor to have like a 180 shift like in how she perceived Blake. Seven of Swords. Yeah, I think that she didn't like the comment that she made, but I don't know if she said anything. I think she might have kept it to herself. King of Wands is like, I don't need to speak for you to know that you shouldn't do that, right? Just the same way as like the first spread. Like she doesn't need to establish to Blake that she is definitely not her dragon. I think that there's a mutual understanding. Six of Pentacles. Like we both understand that we're a little bit not okay, but we're gonna just kind of the Hangman. We're just gonna put a pause on our relationship, at least in a public way. So I don't think their friendship is over. I don't think Taylor would do that. They have a very long-standing friendship, and also just astrologically, they really click. So let's see. What is the future of this friendship? Seven of Pentacles. Yeah, they put a lot of effort and time and history into this connection. It's not going to end over something like this. Eight of Pentacles. Yeah. They're both invested in this. And the Page of Pentacles. Page of Pentacles makes me think that they're just... If there is an issue, they're just going to talk a little less. But I don't think Taylor would ever say that. And I don't think Blake would ever say that. It would be like a mutual unspoken understanding that I'm going to back off right now. I'm going to support you from the sidelines. We're good, right? It's like a little awkward tension, but we're just going to move past it. Ace of Cups, they really care for each other. And also, like, emotions are really high. Like, Blake is probably not even thinking about Taylor right now. She's thinking about her family and, like, how she's going to get out of this. So I think they'll be okay. Anyway, so that is everything. Let me know what you guys thought of Justin and Blake and Taylor. Like, there's so many moving parts to this. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.